on va passer immédiatement à une autre élève qui est aussi élève de l'école de l'Ashram, mais qui est tranquillement devenu un des grands maîtres dans le domaine du commerce. Et un des. Je vais lui introduire en anglais parce qu'il y a des gens ici qui parlent que l'anglais. Le titre que je lui ai donné à M. Venkatesh Rao, connu comme KV Rao, c'est les temps miraculeux dans lesquels nous vivons. The Miraculous Times We Living in. KV Rao holds a Master's in International Business from the Indian Institute for Foreign Trade, New Delhi. He has worked in diversified industries and enterprises in leadership positions, including a stint with the Singapore Civil Service as a director with the International Enterprise Singapore. He is specialized in international business and has an experience that covers 40 countries in the developed and emerging markets with a focus on South Asia. He is currently the resident director ASEAN for Tata Sons Private Limited, promoter of the Tata Group. Concurrently serves as a board member and chairman of several Tata regional subsidiaries. He is active in community work and arts and industries body. He is also the president of the CIFAs, which is a cultural organization, probably the most premier cultural organization out of India, which is based in Singapore, called the Singapore Finance, Indian Finance Association, Society. There are many things which are not in this introduction, but I will not go there. But one personal note about my friend, Mr. KV Rao. Of course, I can understand him a little more than many other friends because I also had a very small stint with the Tatas. And I remember several years ago when we were coincidentally flying together in an aircraft and he was still working in India, he had mentioned, Lalit, one day I hope I can also contribute to the Tatas. And today he's a director in Tata Sons with I cannot read all the positions that he's holding as chairman and directors of so many important Tata companies. So with this, more than that, he's our student of the Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education. I don't want to embarrass him more with all his titles, so I request you to please come and give us the miraculous times we are living in.
Thank you. I don't know that. Yeah, okay. Bonjour. Je comprends français, mais pas parler maintenant. Oubliez, c'est très mauvais. If I start, you will run away from here.
Me à côté.
À côté. It's you know, Lalit himself is a miracle. And if you want to know what kind of a miracle it is, you'll have to put an hour, and no better person than Anil Sharma to tell you why he's a miracle. So I won't steal the thunder from him and tell you why he is, but he's so persuasive and he gets whatever he wants, and I've been a very reluctant person to speak in Pondicherry for sure. I do this almost like a profession now that I've completed 6 decades of my own life, and it's time to give back in wherever I can, so I get invited and I do speak. But when I come to Pondicherry, I come to here and enjoy with my dear friends. But he suggested you speak, and I said, you're a miracle and the times you're living are a miracle too. So he said, why don't you speak on that? I said, okay, that doesn't seem too difficult to touch upon. I think you've given me, 20 minutes or so to speak?
We have time till 11 o'clock, but it should complete by 11.
Okay, that's good. Well, let me just give you a feel of where we are living. All of us are living, and those who are living in Pondicherry are far more fortunate than those perhaps who are living in different parts of the world because of a variety of reasons, because there's so much a bombardment of the environment on you. that often people seem to live today in times of dejection, despair, anger, frustration. What's happening to the world? This is what comes. You pick up the newspaper, so much of negative news. You look at the television, there's negative news. And you almost lose a heartbeat thinking of your own future and the future of the world, as it were. But if you look at times historically, they've always been contradictory and paradoxical, to say that the worst of the times are the times where mankind, humanity, technology, science, whatever you take it, human endeavor takes it to a completely different place. So these two things are contradictory, yet there's a confluence of negativity with a huge amount of positive surge that happens. And if you start looking at the miraculous times that we are living in, we often miss many things if you don't look at the detailing part of it. Just look at the way, I will touch upon a few areas which touch all of us every day. Let's talk about life itself. I think living for 100 years through sheer science, no yoga, sheer science, is not a possibility, but it's almost a reality. To replace an artificial nose which is grown on the lab, or a ear, or a cartilage, or even human parts like valves which go into the heart are being lab grown. Isn't that a miracle? Did mankind ever think that science will just take charge of it? And I think 100 years life is more or less assured for, if not our generation, the next generation. No matter how much you destroy, you still have a science that sort of surges you into that area. The medical science, since we're talking about life, today fixes most problems that you have. You know, if you look at robotics, and the way surgery is done today is the doctor sits in front of a computer like this, and then the machine actually goes ahead and does what it needs to do on you. And that's not just enough. It is being done overseas. You can sit in America and operate a person in India, provided you're linked up and you're willing to go through that kind of an operation. That's a miracle for sure. The other miracle that touches all of us is the miracle of communications. You see, I think when we were all in Pondicherry as young children, having a refrigerator itself was quite an achievement or a novelty, to get cold water, and people will go to corner house just to have the fridge water and make some power syrup. That's the generation we grew up. And today, to look at things being satisfied at the speed of thought for you is absolutely amazing. If you look at every area, communication, we didn't have anything called a mobile phone, right? The mobile phone came and changed life completely. The mobile phone became ubiquitous. It does everything. It also feeds you food, except that it doesn't slap you. Everything else it does. You can order your food, you can do everything. Not just that, you can, did we believe 5 years ago that we could have video calls for free? Completely free. Now, with the technology of teleporting, you can actually almost see a person, and there's technology which Mr. Modi also uses now, and we were in France for about 2 weeks just recently, earlier this month, and we went to Leonardo da Vinci's castle, and there they created this whole thing where you see him speak and coming out almost in reality in front of you, and you feel, you can even put your hand there. You can't find him, but he's very much there, visible. So this is the kind of thing that, let's say, a communication technology has brought to our world, which is yet another miracle. I can go on with quite a few. Let me also talk about economic miracle of the world. We are in 2022. If you measure and plot, I won't bore you with the data and charts, but the fact is, if you look at the last 300 years, the last 100 years have been the most formidable. Out of that, the 70 years period is what you see in the world today as development. Out of the 70 years, which is the post-war period from 1930 to now, the period from 1980 to 2015 has created actually all this wealth in this world and lifted billions of people out of poverty. But still, the dichotomy of it and the paradox of it is, while The world has a population of 7.3 billion people today. 70% of these people live below $10 a day. 70%. 40% of this world's population lives less than $2. Have we done good? Have we done bad? It's a question of whether you see the glass half full or half empty, because it was much worse before. So billions have actually been pulled out of poverty, but still the task ahead is much bigger. Now, the problem side of this economic disparity, which is the root cause of a whole lot of other problems, including terrorism and politics and whatever, is because when people are challenged on their existence, their absolute animal instincts come in and they want to reject the system, is because of what economics calls it, the Gini coefficient has never been as worse in the world as it is today. Gini coefficient means nothing but how much the highest guy in a society earns as well compared to the lowest. That multiple is going up and up and up and up, to the extent that about 3 years ago, one of the international studies did, they said that 40% of the wealth of the world rests with people who are 360 only. That means they said we can get an Airbus, large one, put them in, and we can lift 40% of the world's wealth out. That's what was 3 years ago. But more recently now they said we just need a private jet. It's now reduced to 85 people. So you can imagine the other side of the world where it is moving with that aspect. If you look at the ways of work, if you look at food, for instance, the kind of miracle that food is, with so many billions of people, we're not short of food. The earth has been giving, science complemented with earth has taken such a huge surge in food production. And today if you look at artificial foods, even meats are being lab grown, and health foods and protein foods, and name it what you call, it's just that the world has created so much of capability and capacity around food production and creation of multiple foods. Yet another miracle. It is indeed a miracle if you look at that part. Look at transportation, for instance. I think we all in Pondicherry, our ultimate state of transportation is a bicycle. I'm so glad that we have not evolved from there too much. But for every bicycle there are, I think, 20 bikes, and for every 20 bikes you've got 100 cars here in the small city, which is not designed for it. But most interestingly, if you look at transportation today, the kind of driverless cars that you will get in, not just driverless cars, but look at power and energy. And increasingly, energy and power has come back to its basics, where mankind has understood how to develop renewables from sea waves to sun to, name it, energy which is resident in the environment is being tapped for a commercial use. Eventually, you can have a transportation of a car which drives on free energy with nobody to drive, and you've got to just say where I want to go and the car could take you. Isn't that a miracle of times that in which we are living? I could go on with a whole lot of other examples, but if you look at even education, the kind of developments that have happened in educational sciences, and the subjects in which the human mind has gone and developed capability, capacity, depth, understanding, research, innovation, absolutely mind-boggling. If you go to new universities today, every year you go, you will see 10 new faculties coming out. Earlier we had something like geography. We didn't have earth sciences. Today, if you go into it, there are people who are developing and slicing the subjects into such fine elements. Like earlier, we used to have a good laugh when we said we go to a doctor who's an ophthalmologist and you ask him, are you a specialist on the left eye or the right eye? But that was where it ended. It didn't end there. But today, I think it's far more than that. Do you produce eyes actually? Because artificial eyes are also coming out. In Australia, they did that, and I think we're pretty close to curing blindness. We're close to curing heart disease. We're close to curing diabetes. The works actually. So I think the way the human endeavor, as it were, it is at such frontiers of depth and vistas, I think never before. I think the world has been as smart as people we are. look at COVID. COVID is another miracle of sorts. Huh? You look at it from a positive and negative side. In such a developed and evolved world, one germ, one infection could spread all around the world in such a short period of time and scuttle the entire global transportation, hospitals, and people have died, and it's tragic. But that's also sort of a miracle in my view. And the bigger miracle is that if you look at this history of the Spanish flu and how much time it took for people to make vaccines, today the world has reacted in such speed, such power, such force, and such depth and such impact that we've been able to fix this problem very largely. And today the problem is once again about travel, not resurgent travel, but I think vengeance travel. We just did a bit of international travel, and the whole week, this week, all the airports are stuck because people are flying all around the place. Yet another miracle. When I talked about transportation, I think times are not very far where aircrafts can run on solar energy. I think the first flight took off a few months ago, and they've done about 480 kilometers on solar energy charged aircraft, and then whether you're looking at nuclear energy. So every subject that you're taking in, I think we are living in extremely happening times, very miraculous times. But let me just depart from that for a minute. And has this given mankind greater happiness, and are people much happier, more cheerful, more satisfied? I think there is a disconnect somewhere. And I just heard him speak about India. I do understand French still, and Indian culture and people. I've done a travel around, maybe I was very fortunate. I've traveled not entire world, but at least 50 to 60 countries in my entire career. And increasingly, the challenge for every individual today is we traverse a couple of worlds every day, which we don't realize. The first one is most of our time is in our external interactions, whether you're doing a job or you're doing a career or you're running an art center or you're teaching, no matter what. But the outer frame of your 8-9 hours takes away most of your time, that I call the outer world. The other world is your greater world. You start talking about Putin and you'll talk about Ukraine and Mr. Modi and the politics and what's happening around the globe that can keep you very occupied. And if you switch on the television channels which are blaring, particularly in India, because it causes blood pressure, because the people who are talking are having blood pressure and they cause high blood pressure to the viewers too. So most anxious television channels in the world are from India. You watch it, you get a lot of pressure around all of this. Eventually what happens is there is yet another world that exists, and this is even more important in the context of that fact that this year we are all connected to the ashram, and it's Sri Aurobindo's 150 years. And the raison d'etre for the Sri Aurobindo ashram, Pondicherry, Sri Aurobindo's philosophy and all of that is actually providing a key to a door which I think mankind is searching for, and everyone is subliminally looking for it, whether it's obvious, stated, or it is something which is an inner desire. That lack of joy, satisfaction, happiness, and search for well-being comes from the need to go and look at the world that resides within oneself. We have lost the key to go within and look at ourselves. And what happens for the whole world actually, and where India has a unique position, and one of my very dear writer friends once wrote an article on this, that the world comes to India to discover the kind of country it is, but India is such a paradox that they end up discovering themselves than the country, which is so seminal about our country. And not just that, if you search all through India and then you come back to Pondicherry, you perhaps find the key somewhere here to actually open the door to discover oneself. And when I think these three worlds can join, it's a magical place that we are living. When you have a better understanding and insight of what is going on within you, you connect so much better to the outer two layers of what you are transacting and what you are going through every day. And there is an interesting symbiosis that takes place, and you don't get dejected, you don't get angry or frustrated, but you see the Maya, you see the Leela, you see the whole movement of the world, which is actually miraculous and magical. I hope I've done my piece. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can take 2 questions.
One miracle from ashram context is most of us have gone out in the world without degrees, and somehow things have worked out very well for everyone.
No, absolutely. I think degree is a temporary measure in my view. It's like a gate pass. It's like, what in Bureau Central you get something to enter now. I have to go and tell 3 times, the next student they say, no, you show me the pass. So it's only to enter, but after that what you do in life is just the same. So I don't think I attach too much value to degree, because interestingly enough, I think degree doesn't really guarantee that you even have knowledge, and knowledge doesn't guarantee that you have wisdom, and unless you have wisdom, you're not very real. You can accumulate a lot of knowledge, and when you have that knowledge and you add experience to it, then perhaps you have a chance to get some wisdom. Is usually is hindsight, and what I call experience is actually what you get when you don't get what you want. When you get what you want is not really experience. You keep your knowledge and you go through life, whatever you do, and when you don't get what you want, I think you start realizing what is really in the depth of it, and you really become a wiser person. So I think in ashram we have lots of wisdom and a lot of wise people. So that's a great delight after 6 decades. We thought differently when we were in our 20s and 30s. I thought there was a plan to ask some naughty questions. None is coming. Welcome, any questions?
Satisfied every single body looks like with your talk. Nobody has questions. But, you can recognize miracles only if you have the capacity to recognize it. And right now, a lot of people are recognizing it, at least in this forum I see. So you have given miracles within and miracles without. But maybe as a person who lives in Singapore and is completely attached to a life and an environment which is focused on the within, maybe you can talk 1 minute on that aspect. I remember when we were discussing this point, where you also mentioned in one of the forums, it's better to spend more time, instead of spending more time on internet, it would be good if you can spend some more time on internet.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, each one of us are a complexity. I don't think none of us are simple. We may appear to be simple, but there is a tremendous amount of complexity in each one of us. I think the journey is, I said the key, opening the key is a strong need to realize. You see, we have no control when we get up in the morning what we're going to do the next hour. Most of us, I mean, to be honest with you, no matter how much you have a plan for the day, your appointments, you have no control on what thoughts come to your mind, who you're going to meet, and what actions will take place and what reactions will take place. So I think coming back to the base point, if you read the mother's thing, even if it was a level of consciousness which is constant, or you try to become conscious at intervals, or at the end of the night, you at least start looking back upon the day, the way things have happened to you on a screen, and look at it from within as to how you've sort of handled and debated, and how your vital energies have flown, and how vitalistic you have been, how detached you've been. So all of this is actually like a training in a sports, it's not easy. It doesn't come by just a wish, but I think it has to be a conscious action. But what it brings is, it brings a certain equanimity, it brings joy, and against adversity, you're able to smile. The adversity does not completely envelop you in a manner that you lose your head, which is what exactly it happens. And the second thing is, we are all reactive beings. So constantly we are interacting, and interaction is actually reaction. And you don't sort of pause, or you don't sort of pull back. So a lot of these are the elementary lessons, I think, in trying to put in a very short sentence piece: harmony, equanimity, and happiness to oneself. All of us want it, but we go all over the place, going even more external. Let's watch a movie, let's go a party, let's do this, let's do that. It's actually adding a lot more of other vital stimuli to the self, which is already quite confused and doesn't know where it needs to go.
Just a small personal question.
Yes.
Like Mangal said, many of us here, we have left Pondicherry or the ashram. We have come back in some form or the other, that's another thing. After completing our studies, I remember you left rather early. Now, then you have done your miracles in your life. So my question is, when you left this place and you got sort of integrated into the system, which is typically what we call the outside world, the outside system, what are the elements that you carried from here, of which probably you were conscious then itself, or probably you became conscious hindsight later on, doesn't make much of a difference. So what were those elements which you would have carried from here, which carried you further?
I think when I left, I was young but not that young. I think a part of my personality got shaped and formed. And I think Mother wrote somewhere by 15, you already are more or less made up. I think that initial cast that I got from ashram, perhaps it was strong enough and not fragile to break, despite what I went through life. So that has remained to be my core personality no matter what I have been. But I think I have kept myself very open, and I've had experiences of all kinds, good, bad, indifferent, challenging, and I have learned from all of that. And the two blessings I've had is one, family, which is I think 3 or 4 generations very aligned to the ashram. So there is always the father, the mother, the sister, the group of friends who are all connected. So there was no need to look beyond the lake, which was always full of very cool waters to give you whenever you felt thirsty. So you didn't look out for it. The third element is, as you grow and your intellect sort of develops, I think your own reading and your personal experiences are the most reinforcing. I don't think today the world has turned into a talk show, and I'm a little reticent about it, because whether it's economy, business, education, philosophy, science, no matter what, everywhere you've got talk shows and people talking and talking and talking. Actually, talk has never resolved any problem, nor it has done anything, because talk is usually a person to talk and people who listen, and it just drops off after a few minutes because very few people actually carry it. The change happens when you experience, and that's when I talked about experiencing it. So if you have a conscious experience of your life and start reflecting on it, I think that reinforces your fundamental core. And that's my personal experience, and I get more convinced. More than convinced, you become resolute, you believe in yourself, and you believe in what has been granted to you and given to you, and you value it when you really experience it. If you didn't experience it, then it's a little bit more mental and it doesn't come from inside. So I'm very fortunate for that. And I come back here quite regularly, as you know. When there was no COVID, 3 or 4 times I snatch a visit here, and it's like electric cars, battery charging. I come here, get charged up in 3 or 4 days and go back, So it always helps. It always helps me to come here.
Yes, sure.
Oh my God.
So it
You have
just
the right to
happened
ask.
to me. What happened to me? I believe science has given a lot of miracles to the world. We've conquered food, with the global transportation, communication. But you also said that growing all this food has not stopped people from dying from hunger. People are still unhappy, though communication has advanced, there's still disconnects and people are growing apart. So we know that the key and the solution lies in spirituality. And I'm sure we feel very optimistic that the world will evolve to better place. But I think the real miracle would be when science, with all its miracles, and spirituality converge. So, what is your comment?
There is no magical moment from when I think the world would be completely resolved of all its issues, and it will be a supramentalized world, because that's, I suppose, I won't put a time target on it, nor can I plot it, because it's beyond my comprehension and my pay grade, as they call it. It's way beyond. But it's just not science. I didn't touch on the other, I touched a little bit on economics. If you look at political thought and global affairs and geopolitical situations today, the world has never been as difficult as it's been in the last few years. I mean, take up the war issue. Isn't it a miracle that Russia attacks Ukraine and thought 30 days they'll be done? It's now almost getting down to 6 months and nothing. It's a miracle of sorts. Now, after the world wars and before the Industrial Revolution, there are three institutions, which is the IMF, the World Bank, and the United Nations, and the World Trade Organization, which is called the Bretton Woods organizations, have powered this 70 years of the whole world. They are dysfunctional today. Nobody bothers about them. You know what China has been doing to it? They need recreation. So what's the time? This is the time for reset. All of these will get reset. And that's why I said these are miraculous times, because I think the new problems cannot be dealt with old solutions. And the search in the world is for new solutions towards new problems. I think from a spiritual sense too, when Mother talks about the new world, you need to come with new initiatives and the new ways of thinking and the new ways of doing things. And I think the world is grappling. And for me, from a spiritual standpoint, I did talk about it more on an individual basis rather than a collective basis. But when you look at collective of the mankind, also for the collectivity to find these new solutions, it will only come with human union. It doesn't come without that. And I think unless there is that realization of one humankind and the basic tenet of a man caring for man, these things are not going to happen. That will be the basis of a new political order, a new economic order, new global order, and a new geopolitical system, which I think are today at a pressure point where they will come out. They will appear, and I think there will be leadership coming up. And I'm not pessimistic, because I'm rooted in a certain belief that all that is happening is for something good that is struggling to come out. And that's why I call it a miraculous time. And we're present. Perhaps we'll still be there to see that for the next 20 or 30 years. Otherwise, we'll take a pill and live till 100.
Thank you so much, Venkat. Really thank you for this excellent talk. But more than your talk, which definitely was very good, and you gave an insight into not only the miraculous times, but also the importance of focusing a little bit within and enjoying the miracles which happen from within, without. But more than all that, I want to thank you for having the willingness to share and your kindness to agree to come.
That is your magic, not mine.